She accepted a blind date with a millionaire, and her life changed forever after that dinner. The late afternoon sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Premier Physical Therapy, casting long shadows across the treatment room. Zara Knight adjusted her patient's leg with practiced precision, her keen eyes focused on every subtle movement. At 28, she had already built a reputation as one of Manhattan's most promising physical therapists. "That's it, Mrs. Rodriguez. Just a little more," Zara encouraged, her voice warm and confident. Her patient, a grandmother recovering from hip surgery, grimaced but pushed through the exercise. "And perfect. You're making incredible progress." Mrs. Rodriguez beamed, the pride in her achievement evident. "Only because you make me feel like I can do anything, honey." Zara's infectious laugh filled the room as she helped Mrs. Rodriguez to her feet. This was why she loved her job, watching people reclaim their strength, their independence, their joy of movement. It wasn't just about healing bodies, it was about restoring confidence. After finishing her notes, Zara gathered her things, her mind already dancing with possibilities for her own studio. She had been saving diligently, researching locations, drafting business plans. The dream felt closer every day, a modern, welcoming space where healing and movement would intertwine. The subway ride home was packed with the usual evening crowd, but Zara barely noticed. Her wireless earbuds pulsed with an infectious Afrobeat rhythm, and her body swayed subtly to the music. A small smile played on her lips as she thought about the upcoming dance session with her best friend, Layla. Her phone buzzed with a text from her grandmother. "Baby girl, don't forget Sunday dinner. I'm making your favorite mac and cheese." The thought of her grandmother's cooking made her stomach growl. Sunday dinners at Grandma Rose's were sacred, a tradition that kept their family close despite everyone's busy lives. The house would be filled with the aroma of soul food, laughter would echo through every room, and stories would flow as freely as sweet tea. Later that evening, at the dance studio, Zara let the music take control. Her natural curls bounced as she moved, each step a celebration of freedom and joy. Layla matched her energy, their bodies moving in perfect synchronization. "Girl, you're on fire tonight," Layla called out, her hijab slightly askew from their energetic routine. Zara spun gracefully, her yellow workout top contrasting beautifully with her dark skin. "Had to work off Grandma's cornbread somehow." As they cooled down, Layla brought up the inevitable topic. "So, any interesting prospects in the romance department?" Zara's smile faltered slightly. She absent-mindedly touched the delicate gold necklace at her throat, a habit she'd developed after her last relationship ended. "You know I'm focused on the studio right now." Layla raised an eyebrow, unconvinced. "And that has nothing to do with Michael." The name still had the power to make Zara's chest tighten. Michael had been her first serious relationship after college. He'd seemed perfect, successful, charming, ambitious, until she realized he saw her as an exotic adventure rather than a partner. His casual comments about her hair, her family's traditions, her dance style, each one had chipped away at her confidence until she hardly recognized herself. "Faith, that was 2 years ago," Zara deflected, taking a long drink from her water bottle. "Exactly. 2 years of you hiding behind work and dance. You're brilliant, gorgeous, and have more passion in your little finger than most people have in their whole body. Don't let one ignorant man rob you of love." Back in her apartment, Zara stood on her small balcony, looking out at the city lights. Her space reflected her personality. Warm colors, African prints mixed with modern furniture, photos of family and friends covering one wall, and her collection of plants thriving in every corner. She pulled up her business plan on her tablet, making notes about potential locations. The Upper West Side had some promising spaces, but the rent was steep. Still, with her savings and the small inheritance her grandfather had left her. A notification popped up. Another text from Layla. "Dinner tomorrow, I promise no matchmaking attempts." This time, Zara smiled despite herself. Maybe Layla was right. Maybe it was time to open herself up to possibilities again. But it would have to be different this time. She wouldn't compromise who she was or dim her light for anyone. She walked to her bedroom, passing the full-length mirror. Her reflection caught her eye. Strong, beautiful, unapologetically herself. The woman looking back at her had grown so much since Michael. She was stronger now, more certain of her worth. As she got ready for bed, Zara's mind wandered to her patients, her future studio, her family's support. Love would come when it was ready. For now, She was dancing through life on her own terms, and that was more than enough. Little did she know, fate had already set in motion events that would challenge everything she thought she knew about love, trust, and the power of second chances. The 45th floor of Sterling Innovations commanded a breathtaking view of Manhattan's skyline, but Nathan Alexander Sterling barely noticed it anymore. At 35, he had achieved what most people spent their entire lives chasing: success, wealth, respect. Yet on nights like this, with the city glittering below like scattered diamonds, the emptiness felt almost tangible. The Singapore numbers just came in, Mr. Sterling, his assistant, Daniel, announced from the doorway. They're exceeding projections by 15%. Nathan nodded, his reflection in the floor-to-ceiling window mirroring his precise movements. His tailored charcoal suit and steel blue tie projected exactly what he had spent years cultivating: power, control, excellence. Schedule a call with the APAC team for tomorrow morning. I want to capitalize on this momentum. After Daniel left, Nathan's fingers instinctively moved to his left eyebrow, tracing the almost invisible scar hidden beneath, a habit he had developed over the years when stressed or deep in thought. The morning's board meeting had been particularly challenging, with the company's rapid expansion creating both opportunities and complications. His office, like everything else in his life, was a study in minimalist perfection. Clean lines, monochromatic colors, everything in its place. The only personal touch was a black and white photograph hanging on the wall, a misty morning in Central Park, a solitary figure on a bridge, their silhouette barely visible through the fog. He had taken it himself. Though few knew about his passion for photography, the intercom buzzed. "Mr. Sterling, your mother is on line 1? Nathan suppressed a sigh. Put her through. He already knew what this call would be about. "Nathan, darling." Catherine Sterling's voice carried the polished tone of Manhattan's upper echelon. "I trust you remember about the benefit dinner next Thursday." "I have a meeting that evening, Mother." He shuffled some papers on his desk, more for something to do with his hands than actual need. "Cancel it." It wasn't a request. "The Ashworths will be there. Their daughter Olivia just moved back from London. She's working at Goldman now." Nathan pinched the bridge of his nose. "Mother." "You're 35, Nathan. It's time you thought about settling down. The company needs stability. The board is more than satisfied with my performance." He cut in, his tone firm but respectful. "The Singapore expansion alone, I'm not talking about business, and you know it." There was a pause, and when she spoke again, her voice had softened. "It's been 15 years, sweetheart. Madeline wouldn't want—" "I have another call coming in," Nathan interrupted, his grip tightening on the phone. "We'll talk later." He ended the call before she could respond, walking back to the window. The mention of Madeline's name had done what it always did, ripped open a wound that had never truly healed. 15 years hadn't dulled the memory of screeching tires, shattering glass, and the deafening silence that followed. Hours later, Nathan's private elevator opened into his penthouse apartment. The space was impressive, all steel, glass, and white marble, but it felt more like a high-end hotel suite than a home. He loosened his tie, poured himself 2 fingers of Macallan 18, and walked to his study. Hidden behind a panel was a door that led to his darkroom, the one space where he allowed himself to be less than perfect. The familiar smell of developing chemicals greeted him as he entered. Here, among the hanging photographs and red safety lights, he felt closest to who he used to be before the accident. He pulled out a portfolio of his recent work: black and white street photography, architectural studies, moments of life caught in shadows and light. Each image revealed what he couldn't express in words: loneliness, longing, the search for connection in a disconnected world. His phone buzzed with a text from his younger sister, Madison. Mom called. "Stop being difficult. Come to the dinner. I'm tired of watching you hide behind that desk." Nathan set down his drink and picked up one of the photographs, a series of doors, each one slightly ajar, leading into darkness. He had taken it last weekend, during one of his solitary walks through the city. The metaphor wasn't lost on him. Another text from Madison. "I'm setting you up on a blind date. No arguments. You need this." "She's amazing. Nothing like the usual trust fund babies Mom throws at you." Before he could reply, she sent another. "And don't you dare cancel. I'll just keep setting them up until you go on at least one." Nathan looked at his reflection in the dark room's small window. Deep blue eyes stared back at him, carrying the weight of unspoken stories. His perfectly trimmed dark hair, the subtle touches of grey at his temples, The aristocratic features inherited from his mother. Everything about him was designed to keep people at a safe distance. But lately, that distance had started to feel less like protection and more like prison. He picked up his camera, a vintage Leica M6 that had belonged to his father. Through the viewfinder, the world made sense. There were no expectations, no pressure, no ghosts of the past. Just light and shadow, moment and memory. A final text from Madison lit up his phone. Her name is Zara. Friday at 8. Antonello's. Don't make me come drag you there myself. Nathan set down his camera and reached for his drink. Friday. A blind date. His sister's attempt to pull him out of his self-imposed isolation. Part of him wanted to cancel immediately, to retreat back into the safe, controlled world he had built for himself. But something, maybe the lateness of the hour, the whiskey warming his blood, or the weight of 15 years of holding everyone at arm's length, made him hesitate. He thought about the photograph of the doors, each one offering a choice between staying in darkness or stepping into unknown light. He picked up his phone and typed a simple response. Fine. One dinner. Madison's reply was immediate. Trust me, big brother. This one's different. Nathan walked back to the window. The city spread out before him like a sea of possibilities. He had built an empire, controlled every aspect of his life with precision and care. But standing there, with the ghost of Madeline's memory and the promise of Friday's dinner hanging in the air, he wondered if perhaps it was time to let go of some of that control. Little did he know, the woman his sister had chosen would challenge everything he thought he knew about love, loss, and the careful walls he had built around his heart. Girl, you are not wearing those basic black pumps to this date, Layla declared, diving into Zara's closet with the determination of a seasoned fashion commando. This is Antonello's we're talking about. That place has a 2-month waiting list. Zara sat on her bed, surrounded by discarded outfits, watching her best friend tear through her wardrobe like a tornado. Maybe this is a mistake. I don't even know this Madison person, let alone her brother. Madison Sterling is one of my regular clients at the spa, Layla replied, emerging with a red dress Zara had forgotten she owned. Trust me, she's nothing like those uptight Upper East Side princesses, and she swears her brother is different too. The dress in question was a deep crimson number that Zara had bought on impulse during a shopping spree with her cousin last year. The color popped beautifully against her skin tone, and the cut was both elegant and daring. She had never found the right occasion to wear it. Perfect, Layla held it up triumphantly. With those gold strappy sandals you wore to your cousin's wedding. An hour later, Zara stood before her mirror, hardly recognizing herself. The dress fit like a dream, hugging her curves without being restrictive. Her natural curls were styled in a sophisticated updo, with a few strategic tendrils framing her face. The gold accessories, delicate earrings that had belonged to her mother, and a simple bracelet, completed the look. One final touch. Layla spritzed Zara's favorite perfume in the air, letting her walk through the scented mist. Now remember, this is just dinner. No pressure. If he's boring, you never have to see him again. Across town, Nathan stood in his penthouse, adjusting his tie for the 3rd time. He had chosen a charcoal Tom Ford suit that his tailor had insisted brought out the blue in his eyes. His sister's words from their earlier phone call echoed in his mind. Just be yourself, Madison had said. The real you, Nate, not the CEO version. The real him. Nathan wasn't sure he remembered who that was anymore. Antonello's was nestled in a historic building in the West Village, its warm lighting and exposed brick walls creating an atmosphere that was both elegant and intimate. Zara arrived first, her Uber dropping her off precisely at 7:55 p.m. The maitre d' led her to a quiet corner table, partially screened by a beautiful vintage wine rack. As she settled into her seat, Zara's professional instincts kicked in, helping her manage her nerves. She observed the space, appreciated the soft jazz playing in the background, smiled at the way the candlelight created dancing shadows on the brick walls. At exactly 8 p.m., Nathan walked through the door. The maître d' recognized him immediately. Sterling Innovations had held several corporate events here. As he was led to the table, Nathan's practiced eye took in every detail of the restaurant's ambience, until his gaze landed on Zara. Time seemed to slow. She had just taken a sip of water, and the candlelight caught the elegant line of her throat, the graceful way she set down her glass. Her eyes met his, and Nathan felt something he hadn't experienced in years, genuine surprise. "Hi," she said, standing to greet him. Her voice was warm, musical, with a hint of nervousness that made her seem refreshingly real. "I'm Zara." Nathan Sterling. He found himself momentarily at a loss for words, struck by the way her smile transformed her entire face. "Damn, it's a pleasure to meet you." As they settled into their seats, both were acutely aware of the unexpected energy between them. Nathan noticed the way Zara's fingers played with her water glass when she was thinking, the subtle floral notes of her perfume, the intelligence in her eyes as she studied the menu. Zara observed his impeccable manners, the subtle scar near his eyebrow that he occasionally touched without seeming to realize it, the way his professional facade softened slightly when he smiled. "Your sister tells me you're a physical therapist," Nathan said, as their waiter poured the wine he had selected, a rich Brunello di Montalcino. "I am." Zara took a sip of wine, appreciating its complexity. "I'm currently working at Premier Physical Therapy, but I'm in the process of developing plans for my own studio." Nathan's interest visibly piqued. "A business owner? What's your vision for the studio?" The question opened a floodgate. Zara found herself sharing her dreams for a space that would combine traditional physical therapy with movement therapy, creating an environment where healing wasn't just about fixing injuries, but about reconnecting people with their bodies. "I want it to be welcoming to everyone," she explained, her passion evident in every word. "Not just another sterile medical office, but a place where people feel seen, heard, understood." Nathan found himself drawn in by her enthusiasm, the way her hands moved expressively as she spoke, the clear thought she had put into every aspect of her plan. This wasn't just a vague dream. She had done her research, understood her market, identified her unique value proposition. "You've really thought this through," he observed, genuine admiration in his tone. Zara laughed, the sound sending an unexpected warmth through his chest. "Is that surprising?" "No," he answered honestly. "Impressive." Their appetizers arrived, buffalo mozzarella with heirloom tomatoes for her, carpaccio for him. The conversation flowed naturally, touching on their respective careers, their experiences of New York, their favorite hidden spots in the city. "There's this little jazz club in Harlem," Zara mentioned, tucked away between two larger buildings. "On Thursday nights, they have an open jam session that's just magical." "The Blue Room?" Nathan asked, surprising her. "I've taken some photographs there. The way the light falls through those old windows at sunset." "You're a photographer?" Zara leaned forward, intrigued by this unexpected revelation. Nathan hesitated, then pulled out his phone, scrolling to a photograph he had taken at the club, a saxophone player silhouetted against the warm evening light, his instrument gleaming like liquid gold. "Nathan, this is beautiful," Zara breathed, studying the image. "The composition, the lighting, you have a real eye." He felt a strange flutter in his chest at her genuine appreciation. Most people in his world saw photography as an eccentric hobby for a CEO, but Zara saw the artistry, the emotion behind the lens. As their main courses arrived, osso buco for him, seafood risotto for her, both were surprised by how comfortable they felt. The initial awkwardness had melted away, replaced by a natural rhythm of conversation, shared observations, and discovered connections. "So, what made you agree to this blind date?" Zara asked, curious. "Your sister mentioned you don't do this often." Nathan considered the question, taking a sip of wine. "Madison can be persistent, but honestly," he met her eyes, "I think I was tired of saying no to possibilities." The vulnerability in his admission caught them both off guard. Zara felt something shift in the air between them, a deepening of connection that both thrilled and frightened her. "And you?" he asked softly. "What made you say yes?" Zara thought about Layla's words, about her own resolution to stop letting past hurts dictate her future. "I guess I was tired of saying no too." The evening wound down with shared tiramisu and espresso. Neither wanted the night to end, but both recognized the wisdom of leaving while the magic still held. Outside the restaurant, standing close together under the awning, they exchanged numbers. The city hummed around them, but in that moment, they existed in their own bubble of possibility. "Thank you for tonight," Zara said, meaning it. "It was unexpected," Nathan offered, a small smile playing at his lips. In the best way. As Zara's Uber pulled away, Nathan stood watching until the car disappeared around the corner. Something had shifted in his carefully ordered world, and for the first time in years, the prospect of change didn't terrify him. In her car, Zara touched her lips, still feeling the ghost of the smile that had barely left her face all evening. Her phone buzzed with a text from Layla. Well, details. But how could she explain what had happened tonight? How a blind date had somehow turned into something that felt like the beginning of a story she desperately wanted to read. Neither Zara nor Nathan slept much that night, their minds replaying moments from the evening, analyzing glances, remembering smiles. Both knew that tomorrow they would return to their regular lives, she to her patients, he to his boardroom. But something had started here, something neither of them had expected. The question was, were they brave enough to see where it might lead? The next 2 weeks unfolded like a dream. Between their busy schedules, Zara and Nathan found moments to create their own private world. Coffee breaks turned into long walks through Central Park. Quick lunch meetings became hours of conversation. Text messages flew back and forth throughout the day, each one making their phones feel like portals to somewhere warmer, safer, more real. On a crisp Saturday morning, Nathan waited outside Premier Physical Therapy, 2 cups of artisanal coffee in hand. He watched through the window as Zara finished with her last patient, her movements confident and assured. She wore simple navy scrubs, her hair pulled back in a practical bun, yet Nathan found himself more drawn to her than ever. "You didn't have to wait," Zara said as she emerged, but her bright smile betrayed her pleasure at seeing him. "I wanted to." He handed her the coffee, oat milk latte with a hint of vanilla, just as she liked it. "Besides, I have a proposition for you." Zara raised an eyebrow, taking a sip of her coffee. "Should I be worried? There's this hidden gem in Brooklyn, a small Ethiopian restaurant I discovered during a photography expedition, the light there at sunset." He paused, suddenly uncertain. "Would you like to have dinner there tonight?" The suggestion caught Zara off guard. Their previous dates had been firmly in Manhattan, mostly at upscale establishments. This felt different, more personal somehow. "I'd love to," she said softly, touching his arm. That evening, as they sat on cushions at a low table in Addis Ababa kitchen, Nathan watched in fascination as Zara expertly tore pieces of injera bread to scoop up the fragrant stews. "My college roommate was Ethiopian," she explained, noticing his interest. "Her mother would cook for us whenever she visited. She taught me that food tastes better when you eat it the traditional way." Nathan attempted to mimic her technique, making a mess but laughing at his own clumsiness. It was a side of him Zara hadn't seen before, less controlled, more willing to be imperfect. "Here," she said, reaching for his hand to guide his movements. The simple touch sent electricity through both of them. As the sun set, casting golden light through the restaurant's weathered windows, Nathan reached for his camera. Zara watched as he captured the play of light on the colorful walls, the steam rising from their coffee cups, the shadows cast by the traditional baskets hanging from the ceiling. "Show me," she said when he lowered the camera. He scooted closer, their shoulders touching as he scrolled through the images. Each photograph revealed not just what he saw, but how he saw it. Beauty in unexpected places, stories in shadows and light. "You should show these somewhere," Zara said thoughtfully. "They're really special, Nathan." He stiffened slightly. The board wouldn't understand. A CEO spending time on photography. "Is that all you are? A CEO?" The question hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. Before Nathan could respond, his phone buzzed. Another message from his mother about an upcoming charity gala. "Speaking of being a CEO," he said, his tone shifting back to something more formal, "there's an event next weekend. Would you like to be my date?" Zara felt a flutter of anxiety. What kind of event? "The annual Sterling Foundation Gala. It's important for the company." The way he said it made it clear this wasn't just another date. This was Nathan asking her to enter his world, the world of high society, board meetings and expectations. "I'd love to," she said, pushing down her nervousness. Later that week, Zara found herself in an exclusive boutique with Layla, hunting for the perfect gown. "What about this one?" Layla held up a sleek black number. "Too safe," Zara decided. "I want something that makes a statement." They finally found it. A deep blue gown that seemed to capture the essence of starlight. When Zara tried it on, even the boutique owner stopped to stare. "Now that," Layla declared, "is how you announce your presence." The night of the gala arrived clear and cool. Nathan's driver picked Zara up in a sleek black car. When she stepped out at the venue, one of the city's most prestigious hotels, Nathan was waiting at the top of the stairs. His sharp intake of breath when he saw her made every moment of preparation worth it. The blue gown flowed like water, her natural hair styled in an elegant updo with delicate crystal pins catching the light. "You look," Nathan seemed at a loss for words. "So do you," she smiled, adjusting his bow tie slightly. They entered the ballroom together, and Zara felt the weight of dozens of eyes on them. Nathan's hand at the small of her back steadied her as they made their way through the crowd. "Nathan, darling?" An elegant woman in her 60s approached, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "And this must be Mother. This is Zara Knight. Zara, my mother, Catherine Sterling." Catherine's handshake was perfectly polite, but Zara felt the subtle assessment in her gaze. "How lovely. And what do you do, dear?" "I'm a physical therapist," Zara answered, keeping her voice steady. "Currently working on plans to open my own practice." "How enterprising." Catherine's tone made the word sound less than complimentary. "Nathan, the Ashworths were asking about you. Olivia's just back from London." "Mother," Nathan's voice carried a warning edge. "So if you'll excuse us, I believe the first dance is starting." He led Zara to the dance floor as the orchestra began a waltz. In his arms, moving to the music, Zara could almost forget the subtle tension surrounding them. "I'm sorry about my mother," Nathan murmured. "Don't be. I'm used to people making assumptions." The evening progressed with a familiar pattern: polite conversations, subtle social maneuvering, and moments where Zara caught whispered comments behind raised champagne glasses. Nathan remained attentive, but she could see him shifting between two versions of himself: the man who had laughed with her over Ethiopian food, and the polished CEO who handled social politics with practiced ease. During a quiet moment on the terrace, Zara found herself wondering which version was real. The cool night air carried the scent of the hotel's rooftop garden, and in the distance, the city sparkled like a constellation brought to earth. "Penny for your thoughts," Nathan joined her, offering a fresh glass of champagne. "Just thinking about how many different versions of ourselves we all carry," she said honestly, "and wondering which ones are real." Nathan was quiet for a long moment. "With you," he finally said, "I feel like I'm remembering who I used to be, before everything." The vulnerability in his voice touched something deep in Zara's heart. She turned to face him, reaching up to touch the small scar near his eyebrow. He caught her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm that made her breath catch. "Dance with me?" he asked softly. "Out here, just us." They swayed together under the stars. No music but the distant sounds of the city and their own heartbeats. For a moment, all the complications fell away. Their different worlds, society's expectations, their own fears and doubts. But as Nathan held her close, Zara couldn't shake the feeling that they were standing on the edge of something much more complex than either of them had anticipated. The question wasn't just whether they could bridge their different worlds, it was whether they were ready to face the changes that would come with trying. As if reading her thoughts, Nathan pulled back slightly to look into her eyes. "What are you afraid of?" he asked quietly. Zara thought about all the careful walls she had built around her heart, all the reasons she had given herself to play it safe. "Losing myself," she answered honestly. Again, his hands tightened slightly on her waist. "I would never want that." "Sometimes," she said softly, "what we want and what we do are different things." The truth of her words seemed to hover in the air between them, along with all the things they hadn't yet said, about his past, about her fears, about the worlds they would have to navigate together. But for now, under the Manhattan stars, they just held each other and danced, letting the moment be enough. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, its own choices, its own tests of what they were building. The only question was, would their foundation be strong enough to weather what was coming? The morning light filtered through the windows of Nathan's penthouse as he prepared coffee in his pristine kitchen. Last night's gala still lingered in his mind, particularly the moment on the terrace with Zara. Her words about different versions of ourselves had struck deeper than she knew. His phone buzzed with an incoming email. The preview made his blood run cold. From teen Victoria Ashworth, subject, "Wonderful seeing you last night. Lunch to catch up." Victoria. He hadn't expected her to be at the gala. Hadn't been prepared to see her standing there in a silver dress, looking exactly as she had 3 years ago when she'd walked away from their engagement. A text from Zara lit up his screen. "Last night was interesting. Thank you for the dance under the stars." The contrast between the two messages made his head spin. Before he could respond to either, his sister Madison called. "So?" Her voice was eager. "How did it go with Zara at the gala?" Nathan pinched the bridge of his nose. "She was amazing, too amazing for that circus." "Mom being difficult. When isn't she?" He sighed. Victoria was there. Madison's sharp intake of breath was audible. Did she speak to Zara? No, but she's asking to meet for lunch. Nate. Madison's voice carried a warning. Don't. But Nathan was already thinking about all the things left unsaid between him and Victoria. The engagement that had ended when she'd chosen her career in London over their relationship. The way he'd buried himself in work afterward, adding another layer to his walls. Across town, Zara was at her Saturday morning dance class with Layla. The studio vibrated with African drum rhythms as they moved through their warm-up routine. So the gala wasn't a total disaster? Layla asked between movements. Zara executed a spin, letting the music flow through her. Parts were magical. Other parts, she thought of Catherine Sterling's polite dismissal, the whispered comments, the way Nathan seemed to shift personalities depending on who he was talking to. Girl, I see those wheels turning. What aren't you telling me? Before Zara could respond, her phone chimed with a notification. She grabbed it during their water break, expecting Nathan's reply to her text. Instead, she found herself staring at a news article someone had sent her. Sterling Innovations. CEO Nathan Sterling and former fiancée Victoria Ashworth reunite at annual gala. The attached photo showed Nathan and a stunning woman in silver, caught in what appeared to be an intimate conversation. Zara's stomach clenched. Former fiancé? Layla peered over her shoulder. He never mentioned that. No, Zara said quietly. He didn't. Later that afternoon, Nathan and Zara met at their now favorite coffee shop in the West Village. The tension was immediate. Both had questions they were afraid to ask. You look tired, Zara observed, noting the shadows under his eyes. Long morning of calls. He paused. Zara, about last night. I saw the article, she said directly. Victoria Ashworth. Nathan's fingers found his scar, that telling gesture she'd come to recognize. It was 3 years ago. She chose London over... He trailed off. Over you, Zara finished softly. Why didn't you tell me? The same reason you haven't told me about Michael. The name hit Zara like a physical blow. How do you know about him? Madison heard from Layla. He met her eyes. We all have pasts, Zara. Pasts are one thing, but Victoria is very much your present, isn't she? I saw how you looked at her last night. That's not fair. Nathan's voice took on that controlled tone she was beginning to hate. You don't understand the history. Then help me understand. Zara's voice rose slightly, drawing glances from nearby tables. Help me understand why you become a different person, depending on who you're with. Help me understand why your mother looks at me like I'm a temporary inconvenience. Help me understand why you never mentioned that the woman you were going to marry was at that gala. Nathan's jaw tightened. My relationship with Victoria is complicated. Is present tense. Zara stood up. When you figure out if it's past or present, let me know. She walked out, tears threatening to fall. Behind her, she heard Nathan call her name, but she didn't turn around. The next week passed in a blur of missed calls and unsent texts. Zara threw herself into work, staying late at the clinic and spending extra hours researching locations for her studio. Nathan buried himself in meetings, his photographs gathering dust in the darkroom. It was Madison who finally intervened, showing up at Zara's clinic unannounced. He's miserable, she said without preamble, and from what Layla tells me, so are you. Zara continued organizing patient files. He's having lunch with Victoria tomorrow. I know. Madison sat down. But do you know why? Zara finally looked up. Why? Because the night of the accident, the one that gave him that scar, Victoria was there. She was in the other car. The revelation hit Zara hard. What? They were both 17. Nathan was driving his girlfriend Madeline home from a party. Victoria ran a red light. Madeline didn't survive. Madison's voice was gentle. Every time he sees Victoria, he relives that night. It's not love, Zara, it's guilt. Zara sank into her chair. Why didn't he tell me? The same reason you haven't told him the full story about Michael. Some wounds are harder to share than others. That evening, Zara found herself walking through Central Park, retracing the paths she and Nathan had walked together. She thought about walls and wounds, about the versions of ourselves we show the world versus the ones we keep hidden. Her phone buzzed with a text from Nathan. I miss you. Can we talk? She stared at the message, thinking about all the layers of hurt and hope that had brought them to this point, about how easy it would be to walk away, to protect herself from the complexity of loving someone who was still healing. But then she thought about the man who laughed over Ethiopian food, who danced with her under the stars, who saw beauty through his camera lens that others missed. The man who was, perhaps, as scared of being truly seen as she was. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard as the sun set over Manhattan, painting the sky in shades of possibility. The Italian restaurant was quiet for a Thursday afternoon. Victoria Ashworth sat across from Nathan, her silver blonde hair catching the light, her Chanel suit immaculate as always. Between them, 2 untouched glasses of wine and 15 years of shared history sat like a wall. "You look good, Nate," she said softly. "Different somehow." Nathan traced the rim of his wine glass. "Why did you want to meet, Victoria? Can't old friends catch up?" When he didn't respond, she sighed. "I saw you at the gala, with her. You seemed happy. Her name is Zara." "I know." Victoria's perfectly manicured fingers played with her napkin. "She's nothing like the women you usually date." "That's what I love about her." The words slipped out before he could catch them. Victoria's eyes widened slightly. "Love?" The realization hit Nathan like a thunderbolt. Yes, love. Despite his careful walls, despite his controlled existence, despite everything, he had fallen in love with Zara Knight. "I never meant to hurt you that night," Victoria said suddenly. "Either of you. I was young, stupid, showing off my new car." "Don't." Nathan's voice was sharp. "We're not doing this, aren't we? Isn't that why you agreed to meet?" To finally talk about what happened. Across town, Zara sat in her grandmother's kitchen, the familiar scent of rose water and vanilla in the air. Rose Knight's hands moved steadily as she rolled out dough for her famous sweet potato pie. "Sometimes," Rose said wisely, "we're so busy protecting ourselves from past hurts that we miss the healing right in front of us." Zara watched flour dust the air like snow. "Michael made me feel like I had to change everything about myself to be worthy of love. And this Nathan? He makes me feel—" Zara searched for the words. "Like he sees me, really sees me, even the parts I try to hide. But he has his own walls, his own hurts." Zara thought about what Madison had told her. "I'm afraid we're both too broken to make this work." Rose stopped rolling the dough. "Child, let me tell you something about being broken. You see this bowl?" She picked up a beautiful ceramic bowl with gold veins running through its cracks. "This was your grandfather's favorite. I dropped it 10 years ago. Instead of throwing it away, I fixed it using that Japanese technique. What's it called?" "Kintsugi," Zara supplied. "Yes, they fill the cracks with gold, believing that something becomes more beautiful for having been broken." Rose's eyes were gentle. "Sometimes love is like that. It's not about finding someone perfect. It's about finding someone whose broken pieces fit with yours." Zara's phone buzzed. A text from Nathan. "I'm at the Blue Room. Please come. We need to talk." The sun was setting when Zara arrived at the jazz club. Through the window, she could see Nathan sitting at their usual table, his camera on the table in front of him. The same table where they'd first shared their dreams, where he'd shown her his photographs, where she'd first felt herself falling for him. The club was empty, except for a few staff members setting up for the evening. Jazz music played softly from the speakers, John Coltrane's In a Sentimental Mood. "You came," Nathan said softly as she approached. "I came." He pushed a folder across the table. Inside were photographs, dozens of them. Zara looking at her patients with compassion, Zara dancing, lost in the music, Zara laughing with her family, Zara in quiet moments, her face reflecting thoughts he could only guess at. "When did you take these?" "Every moment I could." His voice was rough with emotion. "I've spent 15 years hiding behind my camera, capturing other people's lives because I was afraid to live my own. Then I met you." Zara's throat tightened. "Nathan, I had lunch with Victoria today." The words hung in the air between them. Zara started to stand, but Nathan caught her hand. "Please, let me finish." His fingers were trembling slightly. "I needed to see her, to face her, to finally let go of the past, because I realized something today. I'm in love with you, Zara Knight." Tears spilled down Zara's cheeks. "You can't just say that and expect everything to be okay." "I know." He pulled out one last photograph, the one of the doors leading into darkness. "I've spent my whole life hiding behind these doors, hiding from pain, from loss, from the possibility of love. But you—" He took a shaky breath. "You make me want to step through them." "I'm scared," Zara admitted. "Not just of you hurting me, but of hurting you, of not being enough." "Enough?" Nathan stood, moving around the table to kneel beside her chair. "Zara, you're everything. Your strength and grace and joy and passion. Your morning coffee and Ethiopian food and dancing in the street. You're every photograph I wish I could take, every moment I want to capture and keep forever. I need you to let me see all of you, Zara said softly. Not just the CEO, not just the photographer, everything, even the broken parts, especially those. She touched his scar gently. Because I have broken parts too, and maybe we can help each other heal. Nathan pulled her close, pressing his forehead to hers. I'm sorry I didn't tell you about Victoria, about Madeline. I was afraid if you knew how damaged I was. Shh, Zara kissed him softly. We all have damage. What matters is what we choose to do with it. In the background, the jazz music shifted to Ella Fitzgerald's Dream a Little Dream of Me. Nathan stood, pulling Zara to her feet. Dance with me? They swayed together in the empty club, the late afternoon sun painting everything in shades of gold. Zara rested her head on Nathan's shoulder, feeling his heartbeat against her cheek. Tell me about Madeline, she said softly. And there, in the gentle light of sunset, Nathan finally opened the door he had kept locked for 15 years. He told Zara everything, about the party, the accident, the years of guilt and grief. She held him as he spoke, her presence an anchor in the storm of memory. When he finished, Zara shared her own story, about Michael's subtle cruelty, about losing herself trying to fit his idea of perfection, about learning to love herself again. They talked until the stars came out, until the evening crowd began filtering into the club, until their coffee grew cold and their voices grew hoarse. They talked about fears and dreams, about family and future, about all the ways love can hurt and heal. As they finally stepped out into the night, Nathan pulled Zara close for a kiss that tasted of promises and possibilities. What happens now? She whispered against his lips. Now? He smiled, the expression reaching his eyes in a way she had never seen before. Now we write our own story, together. Above them, the Manhattan sky sparkled with stars, each one a witness to the moment when two people chose to be brave enough to love, not despite their broken pieces, but because of them. The Upper West Side morning buzzed with typical Manhattan energy as Zara and Nathan walked hand in hand, examining storefronts. 3 weeks had passed since their reconciliation at the Blue Room, and today they were hunting for the perfect location for Zara's studio. What about this one? Nathan stopped in front of a corner space with large windows. The morning light streamed in, creating patterns on the worn wooden floor visible through the glass. Zara pressed her face close to the window, mentally arranging equipment and reception areas. The natural light is amazing, but it's probably way out of my budget. Let me help, Nathan said, not for the first time. I could. No. Zara's tone was gentle but firm. We talked about this. I need to do this on my own. Nathan squeezed her hand, respecting her independence while fighting his instinct to solve problems. It was a delicate balance they were learning to navigate, supporting each other without overshadowing one another's dreams. They continued their walk, stopping at their favorite bagel shop. As they waited in line, Zara's phone buzzed with an email notification that made her gasp. What is it? Nathan asked, noting her expression. Remember that small business grant I applied for? Her voice trembled with excitement. I'm a finalist. They want to interview me next week. Nathan pulled her into a tight hug, not caring about the curious glances from other customers. That's incredible. We should celebrate. Actually, Zara bit her lip, a habit that still made his heart skip. I was thinking maybe you could help me prepare. You know more about business presentations than anyone I know. The trust in her request touched him deeply. I'd be honored. Later that evening, they sat in Zara's apartment, presentations materials spread across her coffee table. Nathan watched as she practiced her pitch, impressed by her passion and preparation. Your financial projections are solid, he noted, reviewing her documents. But when you present them, remember to... A knock at the door interrupted them. Zara opened it to find Layla, looking concerned. Girl, have you seen this? She thrust her phone at Zara. On the screen was a business news article. Sterling Innovations CEO Nathan Sterling's new romance raises eyebrows in business community. Below was a photo of them at the bagel shop that morning, followed by quotes from anonymous sources, questioning whether Nathan's relationship with a local physical therapist indicated a lack of focus on business matters. It's nothing, Nathan said quickly, reading over Zara's shoulder. Why are these tabloids always... Well, it's not nothing, Zara cut in, her voice tight. They're using our relationship to question your leadership. I don't care what they... Well, I do, Zara paced her living room. I won't be the reason your board loses confidence in you. And I definitely won't be painted as some gold digger trying to secure funding for her business through her boyfriend. Layla looked between them. I'll give you two some privacy. After she left, Nathan approached Zara, who stood staring out her window at the city lights. Hey, he said softly, look at me. She turned, her eyes bright with unshed tears. I hate this. I hate that loving you comes with public scrutiny. I hate that everything we do becomes someone else's story to tell. Then let's tell our own story. Nathan pulled out his camera. He carried it more often now, capturing moments of their life together. Remember what you told me about your grandmother's bowl, about beauty in broken pieces? Zara nodded, thinking of the gold-veined ceramic that still sat in her grandmother's kitchen. Maybe that's us, he continued. Maybe all these challenges, these differences between our worlds, they're not cracks to hide. They're places for the gold to shine through. A small smile tugged at her lips. When did you become so poetic? When I fell in love with a woman who taught me to see beauty in imperfection. The next morning, they faced their first test of this new philosophy. Nathan had a board meeting, and Zara had been invited to attend a business networking event that could help her studio plans. Come with me, she said impulsively over breakfast. Nathan looked up from his coffee. To the networking event, but the board, reschedule it. Her eyes sparkled with challenge. Show them that Sterling Innovations' CEO is invested in small business development. Turn their story into our story. He considered it for a moment, then pulled out his phone. Daniel, move the board meeting to Thursday and prepare a statement about Sterling Innovations' commitment to supporting local entrepreneurs. The networking event was held in a converted warehouse in Brooklyn. Zara moved through the crowd with natural grace, her passion for her project infectious. Nathan watched with pride as she commanded attention, building connections, sharing her vision. During her presentation, she spoke about the importance of accessible physical therapy, about creating a space where healing meant more than just treating injuries. When asked about her business model, she handled questions with confidence, occasionally catching Nathan's encouraging smile. Ms. Knight, one investor approached afterward, your proposal is intriguing, but I couldn't help noticing Sterling Innovations' CEO in attendance. Should we assume there's corporate backing for this venture? Zara straightened her spine. Mr. Sterling is here as my partner, supporting my dream, but this project stands on its own merits. I'd be happy to walk you through my independent funding strategy. Later, as they walked along the Brooklyn promenade at sunset, Nathan pulled her close. You were amazing today. We were amazing, she corrected. You didn't try to take over or solve everything. You just supported. I'm learning. He kissed her temple. Speaking of learning, dinner at your grandmother's on Sunday. Zara laughed. Ready for another cooking lesson? She's determined to teach you her cornbread recipe. I'll never master it like you have. That's not the point. She stopped, turning to face him. Tyre, the point is you're trying. The point is you're willing to step into my world the same way I step into yours. Above them, a flock of birds wheeled against the darkening sky, free and synchronous in their flight. Nathan raised his camera, capturing the moment. The birds, the sunset, and Zara's face lifted to watch them, everything he loved in one frame. Your grant interview is on Thursday, he remembered. Nervous, terrified, she admitted. Damn but good terrified, like how I felt falling in love with you. Nathan lowered his camera, taking in the woman before him. Strong, ambitious, unafraid to chase her dreams or fight for their love. Know what? I think that's exactly how we're supposed to feel, like we're flying and falling at the same time. Zara's phone chimed with another email, the real estate agent about the corner property. The price was steep, but not impossible with the grant. Another piece of their future, waiting to fall into place. Whatever happens, Nathan said, reading the email over her shoulder, we'll figure it out. Together. Together, Zara agreed, leaning into him as the last light faded from the sky, painting Brooklyn in shades of possibility. They stood there as darkness fell, two people from different worlds who had chosen to build a new world together, one golden-veined moment at a time. The conference room of Sterling Innovations hummed with tension. Nathan sat at the head of the table, his expression unreadable as the board members exchanged concerned glances. The quarterly reports projected on the screen showed a slight dip in Asian market performance. The timing of this expansion is crucial, board member Richardson emphasized, his grey suit as stern as his expression. We need your full attention, Nathan. No distractions. The implication was clear. More photos of Nathan and Zara had appeared in business publications, along with speculation about his commitment to the company. The latest showed them at the networking event in Brooklyn, with headlines questioning his focus on personal interests. "My personal life is not up for discussion." Nathan's voice carried that CEO edge that could silence a room. "Our Asian market strategy." The door opened, and Daniel rushed in, looking apologetic. "Mr. Sterling, I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's an urgent call from Madison." Nathan's heart dropped. Madison never interrupted board meetings. "Excuse me, gentlemen." In the hallway, he took the call. Madison's voice was tight with worry. "Nate, you need to get to Metropolitan Hospital. Now." "What happened?" "It's Zara. There was an accident at her clinic." The world tilted on its axis. Nathan was moving before conscious thought, barely registering, giving Daniel instructions to reschedule the board meeting. The drive to the hospital was a blur of terrible possibilities. He found Madison in the emergency waiting room. "Where is she?" "They're examining her now. She was demonstrating a therapy technique when a piece of equipment malfunctioned. She fell." Nathan's fingers found his scar, that old nervous tell. "How bad?" "The doctor said no major injuries, but they're concerned about her shoulder. They're running tests." The irony wasn't lost on him, the healer becoming the patient. He sank into a chair, his mind racing with memories of another hospital, another wait, another woman he loved in danger. "Nathan?" Layla rushed in, followed by Rose Knight. "How is she?" Still being examined, he stood to greet Zara's grandmother, who surprised him by pulling him into a tight hug. "She's strong," Rose said firmly. "Our girl is strong." An hour passed. Nathan paced while Rose prayed quietly, her worn Bible open in her lap. Layla made coffee runs. Madison handled the flood of calls from the office. Finally, a doctor appeared. "Family of Zara Knight." "Here." Rose stood, reaching for Nathan's hand. The gesture moved him deeply. She considered him family. "Miss Knight has a dislocated shoulder and some bruising. We've reduced the dislocation, but she'll need physical therapy and rest. No work for at least 3 weeks. "Can we see her?" Nathan asked. "She's asking for you." Zara lay in the hospital bed, her right arm in a sling, looking frustrated but alert. Her face brightened when she saw them, then fell when she noted Nathan's expression. "I'm okay," she said quickly. "Really?" Nathan crossed to her bed, carefully gathering her good hand in his. "You scared me." "I scared myself," she admitted. "But I'm more worried about my patients. 3 weeks is a long time." "Don't you dare worry about that now," Rose scolded gently. "Focus on healing." After ensuring Zara was comfortable and getting her prescribed medication, they discussed logistics. Nathan wanted her to stay at his penthouse where he could help care for her. Zara insisted she could manage at her own apartment. "Compromise," Layla suggested. "Stay with your grandmother. Nathan can visit, but you'll have round-the-clock support." The solution seemed perfect until Nathan's phone buzzed with messages from the board. The Asian market situation needed immediate attention. He might have to fly to Singapore. "Go," Zara said, reading his expression. "I'll be fine. I'm not leaving you." "Nathan," her voice was firm, "your company needs you. I have family here. Don't use me as an excuse to avoid doing what needs to be done." He recognized the truth in her words, but the thought of leaving her tied his stomach in knots. Memories of Madeline surfaced, the last time he'd left someone he loved in a hospital bed. "Hey," Zara touched his face. "I'm not her. This isn't that. You're not abandoning me by doing your job." Later that evening, after getting Zara settled at her grandmother's house, Nathan stood in his dark room. The space that had once been his refuge now felt empty without Zara's laughter, her curiosity about his work, her presence making everything brighter. His phone lit up with a text from her. "Made it through first physical therapy session. Turns out I'm a terrible patient, miss you." Nathan smiled despite his worry. Another text followed. "Found the perfect location for the studio. Corner space we loved is available for a better price. Meeting with grant committee next week. Life doesn't stop for injuries." Her resilience amazed him. Here she was, injured and in pain, still pushing forward with her dreams, still encouraging him to pursue his responsibilities. He made a decision then. Opening his laptop, he began drafting a proposal for the board, a way to handle the Asian market situation without an extended stay in Singapore. It would mean more video conferences, longer hours, but he could be there for both Zara and the company. A knock at his door surprised him. It was Madison. "Thought you might need this." She handed him a manila envelope. Inside were old photographs. Him and Victoria at 17, Madeline's bright smile, the aftermath of the accident, the memories he'd been running from for 15 years. "Why are you showing me these?" Madison sat beside him. "Because you need to see the difference. Look at your eyes in these photos, Nate. Look at how lost you were, how much pain you carried." She pulled out her phone, showing him a recent photo of him and Zara at the networking event. The contrast was striking. In the old photos, his smile never reached his eyes, but with Zara, his whole face was lit with joy. "You're not that scared teenager anymore," Madison said softly. "You're not defined by what happened, and Zara's accident isn't history repeating itself. It's a chance to show her and yourself how much you've grown." Nathan stared at the photos, understanding washing over him. He'd been so afraid of history repeating itself that he'd nearly missed the point. This was his chance to write a different ending. His phone buzzed again. Another text from Zara. "Grandma's teaching me to crochet one-handed. Results questionable. Could use a photographer to document this disaster." Nathan grabbed his camera bag. "Thanks, Mads." He found Zara in her grandmother's living room. Tangled yarn everywhere, her laugh filling the space with warmth. She was wearing one of his sweatshirts, her injured arm supported by the sling, looking beautiful despite the bruises. "Just in time," she grinned. "Document my failure for posterity." Instead of raising his camera, Nathan knelt beside her chair. "Marry me." The words surprised them both. He hadn't planned this, hadn't even known he was going to say it until the words were out. But as soon as they were, he knew they were right. Zara's eyes widened. "To Nathan, not because of the accident, not because I'm afraid of losing you, but because seeing you here, laughing despite everything, still chasing your dreams, I want to spend my life loving your strength, sharing your joy, building our future together." Rose quietly slipped from the room as tears spilled down Zara's cheeks. "Are you sure? You're bored. The company. None of it matters without you." He took her good hand. "You make me better, Zara. You make me want to be better. Marry me." Her smile was brighter than any photo could capture. "Yes." Later, as they sat together on Rose's porch swing, Zara's head on his shoulder, Nathan finally raised his camera. He captured the moment, her ring catching the last light of day, their intertwined hands, the promise of tomorrow, written in gold and light. Some stories, he realized, don't need to end in tragedy. Some loves are strong enough to rewrite the past, to heal old wounds, to turn broken pieces into something more beautiful than before. The autumn sun streamed through the windows of the empty corner space that would soon become healing motion, physical therapy and wellness. Zara stood in the center of the room, her shoulder almost fully healed, imagining the transformation to come. The grant committee had approved her proposal, and with careful budgeting, her dream was finally taking shape. "The contractor can start next week," Nathan said, reviewing plans on his tablet. "But are you sure you don't want to consider the other location? The rent here is perfect," Zara interrupted, turning to face him. "Because I got it." "Got what?" Her smile was triumphant. "The lease, at the price I wanted. I negotiated with the owner directly, showed him my business plan, my grant approval, my vision for the space. He's giving me a 2-year lease with an option to buy." Nathan stared at her, pride and amazement mingling in his expression. "You never cease to amaze me. That's why you're marrying me," she teased, pulling him close for a kiss. The past month had been a whirlwind of recovery, planning, and managing the public response to their engagement. The business press had been surprisingly positive, painting it as a romance that bridged different worlds. Even the board had come around, especially after Nathan's successful handling of the Asian market situation without an extended overseas stay, but not everyone was as supportive. "Mother," Nathan sighed into his phone later that afternoon, "the plaza is not what we want." "It's tradition," Catherine Sterling insisted. "Every Sterling wedding for 3 generations. This isn't just a Sterling wedding. This is our wedding. Zara and I want something more personal." The silence on the other end spoke volumes. Finally, Catherine said, "I'm trying, Nathan. I just want what's best for you. Then try harder to understand that Zara is what's best for me." After ending the call, Nathan found Zara in his darkroom, where she'd been spending more time lately. She was studying his recent photographs, shots of her grandmother's house, her dance classes, the progression of her shoulders healing, all telling the story of their life together. "Your mother still pushing for the plaza?" she asked, not turning around. "How did you know?" That crease between your eyebrows, it only appears after calls with Catherine. She touched his face gently. We could consider it, you know. If it's important to your family. No, he pulled her closer. We're having the wedding our way. Speaking of which, he led her to his computer, pulling up a series of photographs. They showed an old greenhouse in the Brooklyn Botanic Garden, its Victorian architecture both elegant and organic. It's being restored, he explained, but it won't be open to the public until spring. However, I know the director of the garden, and Zara's eyes lit up. It's perfect. A place where nature and structure meet, where light pours in from every angle, where two different worlds can grow together, Nathan finished. Just like us. Their moment was interrupted by a call from Layla. Turn on the business news, now. They rushed to Nathan's living room, flipping on the TV. A familiar face filled the screen, Victoria Ashworth, being interviewed about her recent promotion to CEO of a major British firm. Ms. Ashworth, your history with Sterling Innovations. CEO Nathan Sterling is well known. Any comments on his recent engagement? Victoria's smile was practiced. Perfect. Nathan and I have known each other since childhood. While our paths diverged, I wish him and his fiancée all the happiness in the world. However, I do hope the board is paying attention to the company's recent market fluctuations. Zara felt Nathan tense beside her. She's implying the engagement is affecting company performance. Let her, Zara said firmly. We know the truth, but the seed had been planted. Over the next few days, business blogs picked up the story. Sterling Innovations. Stock price dipped slightly. Board members began calling more frequently. The situation came to a head at a crucial board meeting. Nathan sat at the head of the table, Zara beside him, her presence itself a statement. The numbers don't lie, she said calmly, pulling up her own presentation. Since your engagement was announced, Sterling Innovations has actually shown a 3% increase in overall market performance. The Asian market recovery exceeded projections. The recent dip is market-wide, affecting all firms in the sector. The board members exchanged looks. Zara continued, her voice steady. Furthermore, the company's public image has improved. Your engagement has humanized the brand, making Sterling Innovations more relatable to younger investors. Ms. Knight, Richardson spoke up. Your analysis is impressive. I'm a business owner myself now, she reminded them. Understanding market dynamics isn't just for CEOs. After the meeting, Nathan pulled her into his office. That was incredible. I learned from the best. She straightened his tie. Besides, no one messes with my fiancé's company. That evening, they had dinner at Rose's house. Their usual Sunday tradition now. The kitchen was warm with the scent of pot roast and sweet potato pie. Madison and Layla were there too, helping to plan the wedding. The greenhouse will be perfect, Madison declared, looking at the photos. But what about music? Please tell me you're not having some stuffy string quartet. Actually, Zara shared a look with Nathan. We were thinking of having the Blue Room's jazz band for the reception, where we had our first real conversation about dreams. And the ceremony? Layla asked. A blend, Nathan answered. Like us. Classical music arranged for jazz instruments, traditional vows with personal additions. Elements from both our worlds. Rose watched them from her kitchen counter, a knowing smile on her face. You know what I see when I look at you two? I see a love that's not afraid of differences. That's rare. That's worth fighting for. Later that night, in Nathan's penthouse, they stood at his window looking out at the city lights. Zara wore his shirt, her engagement ring catching the light as she gestured toward their future. The studio opens next month. The wedding's in spring. We'll need to find a place of our own somewhere between our two worlds. I've been thinking about that. Nathan pulled out his camera, showing her a series of photographs he'd taken of a brownstone in Brooklyn Heights. It has a garden in the back, room for a home studio, walking distance to your new place. Zara studied the photos, imagining their life there. Our own piece of the city, our own story, he corrected, pulling her close. Below them, Manhattan glittered like a sea of possibilities. They had faced their fears, confronted their pasts, and chosen to build something new together. Not perfect, but real. Not easy, but worth every challenge. Dance with me, Nathan asked, playing their song on his phone, in a sentimental mood, just like that night at the Blue Room. As they swayed together in the darkness, Zara realized something. All those doors she'd been afraid to walk through, all those walls she'd built around her heart, they hadn't really been protecting her. They'd been waiting for the right person to help her open them, to show her that love wasn't about changing who you are, but about finding someone who sees all of you and chooses you anyway. What are you thinking? Nathan murmured against her hair. So I'm thinking that some love stories aren't about perfect matches. They're about perfect timing, about two people being ready to be brave together. Nathan smiled, remembering his own journey from behind the camera to fully participating in life. Ready to be brave with me forever. Forever, Zara agreed, reaching up to kiss him as the city lights painted their future in shades of gold. Spring painted the Brooklyn Botanic Garden in vibrant colors as early morning light filtered through the restored Victorian greenhouse. Nathan stood alone among the flowers, his camera in hand, capturing the way sunbeams danced through the glass panels. In a few hours, these paths would be filled with wedding guests, but for now, the quiet helped him center himself. Through his viewfinder, he noticed a familiar figure approaching. Madison, already dressed in her maid-of-honor gown. Couldn't stay away from the camera even on your wedding day, she teased. Just wanted to remember how it looked before. He gestured to the space that would soon transform into their wedding venue. Before you marry the woman who brought you back to life. Madison's voice softened. Have you finished your vows? Nathan patted his jacket pocket, where a well-worn piece of paper rested. Finally. Turns out trying to capture Zara in words is harder than capturing her in photographs. Across the garden, in a private preparation room, Zara sat at a vintage vanity while her grandmother arranged her hair. Her wedding dress, a modern design with subtle African-inspired details, hung nearby, catching the morning light. Almost ready, baby girl? Rose asked, securing another crystal pin. Almost. Zara touched the delicate gold necklace at her throat, a gift from Nathan, containing one of his photographs of them dancing at the Blue Room, miniaturized into a locket. Is it normal to feel this peaceful? Layla looked up from arranging flowers. Peaceful? Girl, I expected you to be a bundle of nerves. I was, Zara admitted, until this morning. Then I woke up and just felt ready, like everything in my life has been leading to this moment. The door opened and Madison slipped in. Wait until you see the greenhouse. Nathan's been photographing it all morning, when he's not practicing his vows under his breath. As the morning progressed, guests began arriving. The greenhouse filled with an elegant mix of people from both their worlds. Nathan's business associates in designer suits, mingling with Zara's dance students in colorful dresses, board members chatting with physical therapy patients who had become friends. Catherine Sterling arrived early, impeccably dressed but looking slightly uncertain. She found Zara in the preparation room. I brought you something, she said, holding out a small box. Inside was a delicate pearl bracelet. It was my grandmother's. She was also a woman who married into the Sterling family and changed it for the better. Zara's eyes filled with tears as Catherine carefully fastened the bracelet around her wrist. Thank you. No, Catherine said softly. Thank you for showing my son how to live again. The ceremony space took everyone's breath away. The greenhouse's soaring glass ceiling was draped with twinkling lights and cascading flowers. The jazz band, dressed formally but with creative touches, played a sophisticated arrangement of classical wedding music that filled the space with warmth. Nathan stood at the altar, his best man, his old friend and CFO David, and beside him. When the music changed and the doors opened, time seemed to stop. Zara appeared on her uncle's arm, radiant in her wedding dress, her bouquet a stunning arrangement of roses and local wildflowers. But it was her smile, bright, confident, full of love, that captured everyone's attention. As she reached him, Nathan had to remind himself to breathe. All his photographer's instincts wanted to capture this moment, but for once, he was content to simply live it. Their vows were a perfect blend of tradition and personality. Nathan spoke of learning to step out from behind his camera, of finding the courage to live fully through Zara's love. Zara spoke of learning that true love doesn't require changing who you are, but rather finding someone who helps you become more fully yourself. I promise, Nathan said, his voice carrying clearly through the greenhouse, to dance with you even when there's no music, to support your dreams without trying to control them, and to love every version of you, the professional, the dancer, the dreamer, and even the terrible cook. Laughter rippled through the audience as Zara pretended to look offended. I promise, she responded, to remind you to see the beauty in imperfect moments, to challenge you when you retreat behind your walls, and to love every part of you, the businessman, the artist, the lost boy, and the man who finally found his way home. When they were pronounced husband and wife, their kiss was met with cheers, jazz music, and the afternoon sun creating a perfect golden light through the glass ceiling. The reception was a celebration of their two worlds fully merged. The Blue Room's jazz band played everything from classic standards to contemporary hits. The menu featured a fusion of cuisines that represented both their backgrounds. Speeches ranged from touching to hilarious, with Madison and Layla sharing stories that had everyone alternating between laughter and tears. As evening fell, Nathan surprised everyone by unveiling a photo exhibition along one wall of the greenhouse, images telling their love story. Zara teaching her patience, Nathan in his dark room, both of them dancing at the Blue Room, quiet moments at her grandmother's house. The progression of her studio's construction, their new home's renovation, a visual testament to how two different lives had become one shared journey. "May I have this dance?" Nathan asked his wife as the band began playing in a sentimental mood. They moved together on the dance floor, lost in their own world, despite the cameras and phones capturing the moment. "Happy," he murmured against her hair. "Beyond happy," she replied, "although I can't believe you turned our wedding into a photography exhibit." "Had to. It's how I first learned to see the world. To see you." As the evening wound down, they slipped away to a quiet corner of the garden. The spring air was soft with promise, and distant laughter and music created a perfect soundtrack. "You know," Zara said, "a year ago, I was afraid to open my heart again, afraid of losing myself in someone else's story. And now I understand that the right love doesn't make you lose yourself. It helps you find parts of yourself you never knew were missing." Nathan pulled out his camera one last time, capturing his wife in the fading light. But this time, Zara took it from him gently and turned it around, photographing him, then both of them together. "There," she said, showing him the slightly off-center but perfectly imperfect image. "So now we have the whole story." Later that night, as they drove to the airport for their honeymoon, they passed by familiar landmarks: the Blue Room, her new studio opening next month, their brownstone, almost ready, his office building, her grandmother's house. Each place held memories of their journey, stepping stones that had led them here. "Ready for our next adventure?" Nathan asked, squeezing her hand. Zara looked at her husband, remembering all the doors they'd walked through together, all the fears they'd faced, all the joy they'd found. "With you, always." As Manhattan receded behind them, its lights twinkling like stars, both knew that this wasn't really an ending. It was a beginning of their shared story, their merged worlds, their future filled with possibilities as boundless as their love. Some love stories are written in grand gestures and dramatic moments, but the best ones, like Nathan and Zara's, are written in small choices: the courage to be vulnerable, the decision to grow together, the daily commitment to choose love over fear. Their story would continue, written in photographs and dances, in quiet moments and loud celebrations, in the blend of two worlds becoming something entirely new. And in the end, that was the most beautiful story of all. The end. If you were in Zara's shoes, would you be able to trust love again after a love disappointment that shattered your self-esteem? Nathan and Zara show us that sometimes it takes courage to let someone into your life, even when you carry scars from the past. Have you ever lived through a love story that required courage to start again? Your participation in the channel is very important. Please leave your opinion in the comments. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and comment your thoughts. Your participation is very important to us. See you next time.